Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Men Up, Men Down. So this week it's Adam Dorsey, Dr. Adam Dorsey, I shall say.
Doctor.
Yeah, I know he's
Doctor in the house.
I know he's Doctor in the House is that's a music song, right? Because we talk about music, right? Or you talk about
Yeah.
music, and all over my head. I talked with him about psychology.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about The Cure.
Yeah,
There we go.
he's a therapist.
Yeah.
He's a coach. He works a lot with middle-aged men. I mean, some great stuff and a good laugh. A good laugh. I really enjoyed that episode.
Yeah, well, and he's got a book coming out on connection. I was to say there was some good connection going on, I think, between the
Yeah.
three of us.
Absolutely. So enjoy this week's episode. That's all I can say. Read it.
Welcome to the Man Up, Man Down podcast, presented by Volker Beluda and David Dorsey. We discuss the pressures and challenges faced by men approaching middle age that we're often too embarrassed to speak about with our friends. You can find us online at www.manupdown.com. Enjoy the show and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review.
So another episode of Men Up, Men Down, and we're very excited to have Adam Dorsey or Dr. Adam Dorsey on the podcast. We already had a great chat just before we went live, so I predict this is going to be a really good episode. So Adam is a licensed psychologist and executive coach in California, Silicon Valley. Not that I know of any other Silicon Valleys, but we can discuss that obviously. So that's the mind frame I'm already in. So let's see how this episode goes. He's also the author of an award-winning and best-selling book about the four ways people connect, called Super Psyched, and the host of an award-winning podcast called Super Psyched. So he's happily married and the father of two sons. So Adam, I don't think that intro does you any justice. So please tell us what you do, what your book is really about, what are the four ways, and yeah, fill us in, and we take it from there.
So glad to be with you, Volker and David, and we were definitely laughing kind of our asses off offline. So it's just it's an immediate connection, even though there's a massive ocean called the Atlantic between us. There are other Silicon Valleys. There's Bangalore, there is Austin, Texas, which is kind of a rising Silicon Valley. So there are I'm kind of in the OG Silicon Valley where Apple and HP, which is, a shell of what it was, is. The Man Up, Man Down really works for me. For years, I didn't believe I would ever be able to have my dream of becoming a therapist. I know you are one as well, Volker, and the process is quite something else. I had a learning disability. I have both dyslexia and ADHD of the inattentive type. So I had believed for years that I was not intelligent enough, didn't have the wherewithal to become a therapist. And in my 30s, I ended up marrying a psychologist. It had always been my dream job. And in terms of the man up, I did need to kind of spelunk into my soul and summon the energy at that stage in life. Married, had a child, owned a house, had those financial burdens to go to school at night and during the weekends to earn my doctorate. So it was a whole thing. And so I feel so privileged to be in this field. Every day I'm in it. I do feel super psyched. My nickname in high school, I was in a garage band, playing a lot of music from the UK, actually. And my nickname was Enthusiasm. And I can tell you that my enthusiasm was nearly none when I was in my 30s in terms of my work. But after I became a psychologist, and thankfully my sons know me as a psychologist and see a guy who's stoked to go to work. I work primarily with men. I didn't know what my specialty would be. I just trusted that it would present itself, and it has. It was kind of a parade of men knocking at my door saying, I want to talk to you. And I love it. Met the woman of my dreams. Actually met her when I was 8, and that's a story unto itself. But we didn't get together until our 30s. And I've got a 16-year-old son who's a rising junior in high school. That's what we call it out here in the U.S. And a sophomore in college. And this Sunday, I'm actually going to be having my third TEDx experience, and it actually is kind of something that David and I were talking about. A lot of AI experts will be talking, and I will be the non-AI person talking about connection. The title of my talk is "Connection is Everything," and the reason I wrote this book was because the word connection just kept on showing up in my office, and the great psychiatrist Irv Yalom, who wrote tons of existential psychotherapy books, really a VIP of an MVP, as it were, in my field, said that every book he ever wrote bit him in the ass. And this book bit me in the ass. I had no choice but to write this book about connection, because what does it mean when we say we want more connection? And so I really took a deep dive into that topic, and I'm so glad I did.
Great. So what has your journey been then? What did you do before you became a therapist?
Yeah, so when I graduated college, I'd lived in Japan previously as an exchange student. I'd studied the language very intensely.
Yeah.
And just to kind of link up, as I mentioned, I was marinating in this idea that I was not intelligent. And I only a few years realized why I'd studied Japanese, at least one of the reasons, in addition to loving Japanese culture and feeling such a magnetic draw to it. I was actually doing it to vindicate myself so that my family would realize that there was some intelligence between my ears. So I lived in Japan for a number of years. I worked there as a glorified English teacher to Japanese engineers. Fascinating. Living over there, really learning about a system that is so different from my own. And I did my best while I was there to be as gentle of a stepper and to conform with Japanese cultural mores, which is very difficult for a tall, hairy-chested Mediterranean male. But I learned a lot. I stretched a lot. I owe a great debt of gratitude. So I worked there for a number of years. Then I went into a company called Kumon. It's a math and reading center in the United States, and I helped in the UK as well, but from Japan. So I was still kind of in Japan even when I was in the US. And then for a number of years, I went into sales, where I succeeded. Selling was lovely. I actually just saw selling as an opportunity to make friends and to be trustworthy, and to close some deals, as only tailoring the needs of the client to the product or service I was selling. So that was actually a very useful series of skills, but it wasn't fulfilling in all of the ways. I became an executive coach, became certified through kind of one of the oldest coaching training programs, an ICF program it's now called Coactive Coaching. At the time, it was called Coaches Training Institute.
Yeah.
And after which, I started my journey to become a psychologist, which was a whole thing, to go jump through the fiery hoops. And Volker, you know what I'm talking about. In the UK, it sounds like there are fiery hoops to jump through as well. Worth every penny. Certain amounts of conviction really provided me with the fuel that I wanted to do this more than anything.
Brilliant. I don't want to take the podcast off on a tangent too early, but out of a personal interest, do you combine coaching and therapy as well, or do you keep it both very separate?
That's a great question. So if I have a coaching client, they signed an informed consent for that, for therapy, an informed consent. However, in coaching, oftentimes it's very results driven. And in therapy, a known and empirically demonstrated form of therapy is called solution-focused therapy.
Yeah.
And I don't call myself just a cognitive behavioral therapist or a psychoanalytic psychotherapist or a humanistic existential. Or even positive psychology. I use positive psychology in everything I do. But solution-focused therapy is something that I bring in, which has a lot of overlap with coaching. It is a fuzzy area between being a therapist and being a coach. And the only way we can really discern that I know of is through the informed consent and the frame of the relationship. A big difference between coaching and psychotherapy, at least in California where I dwell, is therapy is a reimbursable service, and coaching certainly is not. That is a big difference.
Yeah.
But there are many other differences that exist in between psychotherapy and coaching, for sure.
The reason I'm asking is because my dissertation is going to be on the topic of combining the two.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you have a dual relationship, which is tricky, right? So in terms of consent, as you just mentioned, from an ethical point of view as well, when do you get, when do you step over a border of
Yeah,
not?
and I've been informed that
Yeah,
that's a line that we don't cross, at least in California,
yeah,
and possibly the United States, that we are either a therapist
or a
providing
coach.
psychotherapy or a coach
Yeah,
providing coaching of whatever type it is, whether it's executive coaching or something
yeah.
else.
But it's a great topic. There's a book by a chap called Popovich,
Hmm.
East London University. It's called Personal Consultancy, or the personal consultant, and that's he describes the concept. I just done a literature review on it, so I don't want to take this podcast off on a
Not, I
tangent straight
understand,
away.
and
But
just so that the listeners can know, I'm not
yeah,
saying this as an authority. Check with your ethics and law and ethics
yeah,
professionals to make sure that you're
exactly,
walking the right line. That's what I was informed,
yeah,
and
the
to the
100%.
best of my knowledge.
David, I head over to you. Sorry.
Well, I want to take it off on a tangent and hear more about the band days and
I
what
knew
sort
you
of
would
music
ask
you
that.
played. But we'll come back to that. I mean, I just thought it was well. There's quite a few things that you've said that I found very interesting, but I mean, just sort of from a personal point of view, I mean, I sort of studied for some journalism qualifications sort of back before I had the kids, and sort of now look back on that as quite with quite a bit of pride, where I was working like a 9 to 5 job. As I say, I didn't have well, I actually might have had my daughter, but like doing something. I think that was the first time where I'd sort of studied after I'd left sort of formal education, and it was kind of like fitting it in around other responsibilities, but also it was like something that I wanted to do, and I just remember that being sort of quite a feeling of accomplishment, and and that's I think that is sort of something, particularly like in my 20s. I think I fell into a trap that when I left formal education, that I didn't need to do any more learning, that I had all the qualifications I needed. But I mean, sorry, that was a bit of a ramble,
No,
but I mean, yeah, I mean, connection, it's sort of something that, well, sort of, I think it's sort of well-trodden phrase that connection is the opposite of addiction. And we've sort of, again, it's a bit of a cliche, but in some ways we've never been more connected, but we're more alone. And the pandemic obviously fueled sort of both aspects of that. And I'm sort of between office space at the moment, so I'm working from home. So I've sort of had a bit of a period of I'm not socializing as much as I was, and and it really does impact you. And and I think we kind of, 5 years on from the pandemic, and I've had sort of like some photos come up today, of sort of like of going out for our hourly walk, and and the sky does look clearer, and you can look back in rose sort of tinted glasses. But yeah, I still think that, and I studied psychology at A level, and we learned about some of the sort of horrendous experiments that he had people like Milgram doing back in like the 60s and 70s. But I think we will sort of look back on the pandemic, and I'm not going to get into any kind of like debate of what was right and what was wrong, but I think we will kind of look back as a psychological experiment, and as I say, in terms of connection. And I speak to like people that work in HR, and it's almost like different sort of cohorts, like really young children, sort of children, like older children of a certain age, but at key developmental stages. There's lots of talk about the impact it had. So yeah, again, sort of a bit of a ramble there, but yeah, I think, well, are we, do you think we are going to see the kind of impact of the lack of connection that we had for, such a long period of time, which was unprecedented in, human evolution, essentially.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the reasons that the top website is Google is because we ping for information.
Yep.
And we humans ping for what we want. We think we're hungry because we haven't had a good night's sleep, so we eat a sugary candy bar to make up for. We imagine that it will be the calories that we need to feel energized, but we know that if we eat the sugar, we will have a crash. Similarly, we ping for connection. The problem is we're pinging in the wrong places. We doom scroll, we hit like on a social media post and imagine that that will make the other person feel good. And it does for a millisecond, but it's basically just a skittle. It's not going to have any nutritional value. In fact, I love what Laurie Santos out of Yale University says. She says it's basically the NutraSuite of connection. So a lot of us are doing this social media and online connection, and it's not satisfying our souls. Our brains over the millennia, for at least 35,000 years, maybe 100,000 years, some neuroscientists estimate, have not changed, but our surroundings have. We need to be IRL in front of other people for some amount of time. Each of us has different feeding schedules. An introvert might need less time, and an extrovert might need more time. One of the things that we've also seen, I've at least read these articles, and you two could corroborate or negate this, but apparently, sadly, pubs are on the decline because people aren't going out. They're staying at home and binging Netflix rather than sitting around drinking beer and singing together, which is what we're supposed to do. I mean, I'm not saying this from an alcohol consumption perspective. I am saying from the socialization. But as one who likes beer, I
Can meet both needs.
I can meet both needs, but I mean, I have these really glorious romantic images of being in England or in Ireland, sitting around and laughing hysterically over pints. Like this is what our brains are meant to do. We used to sit around campfires, and now what are we doing? We're holed up and siloed, and clowning on each other, and sometimes in a very bad way, being actually quite sadistic from a distance, so it feels safer. And so while we're connected, perhaps the content of our connection, even when it's at its best, when we're thumbing up, giving a thumbs up for someone, lest that be taken the wrong way. It's profoundly insufficient. So these connections are absolutely bogus, or profoundly insufficient, let's just say. But we think we're meeting a need. It's tantamount to eating a candy bar. Sure, it's calories, but it's not the calories our bodies really, really need. So connection, we don't know what it is. When I ask people, what does that mean when you say you want more of it? There's this blank. It's like, I don't know. So it's that feeling of aliveness. It's that feeling of being aligned with when our behaviors and our values are in alignment. We even have some physiological studies that seem to corroborate this. If you say something that's patently true while you're trying to exert your maximum effort in a physical exercise, you're going to be stronger than if you say something that is false for most people. And yet, so many of our behaviors are not consistent with what our souls are craving. And I'm using a non-scientific term, soul. Yeah, but I hope it's an acceptable word, because we could call it our psyches, our hearts, whatever you want to call it, our internal compasses. We all know what that generally means, even if there's not a particular scientific term. So can we be aligned? And one of the things that we know for sure, and positive psychology has demonstrated consistently, is that when our values are aligned with our actions, we are going to be hitting the target somewhere, possibly the bullseye.
And I think, the counterpoint to that often is when you have got that kind of anxiety and that feeling of something's not quite right, it is that your values and, what you're doing aren't aligned.
Absolutely. And so when I was investing, I call it investing my heartbeats in writing a book. It took me 20 months to write this thing. It was harder than just about anything I've ever done. Thankfully, I have a brilliant wife who's also a psychologist. At one point, by the way, in January of 2024, when I had finished the manuscript, it was done, and I felt like I was in the middle of the desert. I did not like what I'd written, and my wife said, "Come, read it to me." So I read it to her, and she said, "Honey, That's how you write, and this is not how you talk. This is what you sound like. And she helped me find my voice so that connection. I mean, we need people. The African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. Yeah, I'd finished the manuscript. But if you want to go far, go together. My wife and I sat and finished that manuscript in the way. I mean, she's heard me talk arguably, possibly more than she would like to. But she knows what I sound like. And here I was writing from a writer's perspective. Well, she helped me write in the way I speak. And so the book is far better for it. We need people. Barbra Streisand had a song called People Who Need People, or something like that, People. But it's people who need people are the luckiest people in the world. Well, I somewhat disagree. I would say people who know that they need people are the luckiest people in the world and who act on on that need. We need people. Various, again, different feeding schedules. My buddy and colleague, Britt Frank, who wrote a book called The Science of Unstuck, fabulous. She said on my podcast that each of us has different feeding schedules for friendship. You can think about Ross and Joey on Friends. I like thinking about them. Ross was a little more aloof. He didn't need to be in every scene. Joey was kind of there all the time. He was like, hey, I'm Joey. And Ross was like, oh, hi. But he'd show up from time to time. And he would show up big, and he was always a scene stealer. But what I'm driving at is I would imagine that Ross was a little more introverted, had a different feeding schedule from Joey. She describes them as hummingbirds. Hummingbirds need to feed all the time. I don't know if you have those out in England. And versus a scorpion. Scorpions don't need to eat all that often. And I'm not speaking of the venomous part of the scorpion. I'm just talking about their feeding schedules. They eat, I think she said, like once a month. So she's totally cool. She meets quota by meeting friends once a month. I would prefer to meet with them weekly, if not multiple times. I'm more extroverted. But that's one of my connection points. But the biggest, I mean, I want to actually disabuse people of the idea that connection is only what happens with other people. We start with ourselves. That's the nucleus of connection. There are 4 ways we connect. We connect with ourselves. We connect with others. We connect with the world. The world might include our jobs. It might include art. It might include nature. And we connect with something greater, even whether we go to a traditional house of worship or we could be Orthodox atheists and sit under the stars at night, like Stephen Hawking might. Well, actually, Stephen Hawking may have been a bit more theistic. But let's go with Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think he's a little bit less so. Or anybody in Silicon Valley. Many people in Silicon Valley describe themselves as Orthodox atheists. They can sit under the stars and experience awe and the grandeur and how small we are. That is something greater. And we're meant to connect on all 4 points.
Hello folks, it's Volker here. I hope you enjoy this week's episode. As you know, I coach executives, whether that is for leadership skills, or sales leadership skills, or working as a therapist too. There are few ways I can help you to get unstuck, improve your work-life balance, or become a better version of yourself. So you will be more productive and have more time for your family. Whatever it is, you can join my client list of people from General Electric, Pepsi, DHL, Boots, and many others. Book a free exploratory call via my website, www.obnat.us. That's obnat.us. Now back to the show.
Let me pick up on the feelings, because you did a TED talk, right, on men and emotions.
I did.
Right?
That was my first. Yes.
Yeah.
It's called Emotions: The Data Men Miss. I get that very techie.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about it, because I mean, especially obviously working in the Valley. I mean, is it all about men not showing emotion? Is it all about success and the tough guys? What emotions have you seen in the Valley? And what was the TED talk about?
Sure. Well, Volker even goes a little more fundamental than that. I'm going to bust out a big word, but I promise I will back it up. The big word is alexithymia. Alexithymia means the absence of the ability to name our emotions. Many men come into the office. It's almost like Voldemort. It's like we can't talk about this thing. It's this gray eminence, as some people call it. It's like these emotions, they exist, but we don't really know what they are. We're estranged from them. Yeah. And we know from having watched the movie, for example, Psycho, where you can't really see the killer. That's more terrifying than being able to see it.
Yeah.
We need to be able to identify our emotions. Manning up means knowing I believe, is knowing our emotions and becoming smarter as a result of them, using them as a guidepost, but feelings are not facts, but we still need to know what they're telling us and ascertain, is this just something that's distracting me? Or is this something that is informing me? But regardless, I must know what it is. Because sometimes they are very important. And we also know that when we remove the emotional centers from the brain, we cannot make decisions. I believe it was Damasio out of MIT who discovered this, that we cannot make decisions without the emotional centers of our brains. I believe that was him. And I can tell you for sure that when we don't listen to our emotions, we often somaticize. Sometimes our immune systems become weaker. Sometimes we get back pain because we're not listening. I had a guy who showed up at my office with testicular pain of idiopathic cause. In other words, there was no known medical cause for it. I asked him what had been going on in his life, and he said that his best friend betrayed him with his girlfriend. I said, sounds like you feel like you got kicked in the nuts. And he said, yeah, I do, but that's not what this is about. It turned out that with the medical rule out, he came to me a few weeks later saying, bro, I think that that was what that was about. So we can also experience, since we're talking about Man Up, a lot of guys with whom I work who are estranged from their emotions, even, and you can look it up in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, that describes all types of mental health conditions. Erectile dysfunction can be caused by can be a somatic experience. It can be caused by our brains, not just our physiology. So sometimes I'll work with a guy who's doing great physiologically and had a full urological workout, but complains to me that he cannot either have or maintain an erection. And sometimes that is related to an emotional state and not being and not knowing what the emotions are.
I'm sure you've read Van der Kolk. Is it Van der Kolk?
Bessel van der Kolk.
Yeah. The body keeps the score, right?
It's absolutely
such a fundamental
brilliant. Talk about hitting it out of the park, to use an American term. It's so true. The body keeps the score. And sometimes merely talking about it alone is not sufficient. Maybe sometimes it's necessary, but not sufficient. He actually describes some physical things that we can do as well. But I do believe in the name to tame. We need to name things. And when we are estranged from our emotions, when we experience alexithymia, we don't know who the hell we are. We are almost like this, this amorphous Voldemort that was in the first film that we never really got to see.
Yeah. Yeah, why is it so difficult for men to connect to their emotions and their feelings? What's your take on it?
My take is socialization. We're told at a very young age that men are not meant to be emotional, so we cut ourselves off from them. Stop sounding like a girl oftentimes is thrown out in playgrounds, or some type of homophobic slur may be used. So we are talked out of our emotions from a very young age. But here's the tragedy. Boys, organically, when they come out of the womb from a very young age, are more emotionally connected than their female counterparts. We just lose that connection over time due to socialization. This idea is something that Michael Addis, I believe, out of Clark University, writes about in Invisible Men. Great book, by the way.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind when I heard that boys come out more emotionally, forgetting the exact term, emotionally expressive, emotionally open, emotionally connected. I don't remember the exact word, but that is part of the tragedy of being male. And what we want to do is become smarter with our emotions.
I don't know if this is like a really stupid question or not. But do you think that there's added pressure on US men than perhaps their European counterparts? And and this is probably where I make myself sound stupid, but I've been watching a lot of the Yellowstone saga,
Wow.
and sort of, you know, the fact, and sort of as a result I've watched a few other shows, but mainly sort of like the, you know, the 1800 stuff, and it's a realization of like, my God, you know, life was really tough, and it was very much, you know, you had to kind of take what, you know, what you could, and sort of really fight for it. So, you know, it sort of, it's sort of more entrenched in your culture almost, and, you know, and I guess the whole, you know, American dream, and the fact that, you know, if you do strive hard enough, you can achieve anything. You know, and sort of like the gold rush, and then, you know, and then sort of, you know, as you say, you're in Silicon Valley, so, you know, we've got sort of tech gold rushes that we have every so often. So yeah, do you think there is, you know, more pressure in US culture for men?
David, I love that question, and it's evidence that you are a great journalist.
Thank you.
I was speaking with Jeremy Utley. He's the dean of the design school at Stanford, and he said that our environments are what inform us of our creativity and our thoughts. We have to be exposed to a thing to actually use that thing, and I think that you nailed it. We have this vast land, and it was kind of this rugged, individualistic style that allowed us to survive. But for those of us who are aware of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, we are kind of stuck at the more foundational levels. It doesn't allow us to ascend as much. And since it's a triage, it's like survival first. And there's also I want to get mine. There's so much excitement over the gold rush, as you just said. And it's not me working next to my partner, but me against the person next to me. So there is a lot of that. That is probably the genesis of us in the US being estranged from our emotions. I think that makes a lot of sense. I've not heard it phrased that way, but sometimes it takes an outsider to inform a fish of what water is. And you've just done that for me. That being said, I can't speak about Europe. I don't know about, at length, I've spent time in Europe, but I think that there may be something to that might be a distinguishing feature of what the American male struggles with versus perhaps a male from Europe.
Yeah, and I say that with, you know, a complete lack of knowledge really about anyone, well, apart from my German friend here, you know, so well, actually, I've got no insight into other European sort of male mindset, to be honest. So,
but David, if that hasn't been studied, that would be a fascinating study to just compare and see, like, how can we learn from each other, and how can we be better together, so to speak.
yeah,
I mean, I do have that idealistic perspective oftentimes that we will be better together, whether it's with all types of diversity. I was speaking with Temple Grandin, who's, you know, on the autism spectrum, and a big HBO movie was made about her. And she said, we need neurodiversity on teams as well. And one of the things that we found is diversity alone is not sufficient, that we need to actually engage in what's called perspective taking. So to understand the world from the other person's perhaps ethnic or neurological or whatever difference they might be having, to understand their world so that we can be more empathic as we work together as a team. I think Ted Lasso is a great example of it. You've got the soccer team of people, and there's this, we were talking kind of offline, but there was a Dutch player who would dress down his fellow, just unadulterated, just like, you suck today. And the conclusion was, he's not being mean, he's being Dutch. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And I loved watching how Ted was able to be such a unifying force to the team and allow everybody to share their flags of difference and combine as a great team. And I think that there's a lot of reality to that. So many sports teams feature people from different countries and play better as a result of it, probably because they also share the technology. Like, in my country, this is what we do, and this is the move that we do. Amazing, right? I mean, like, I've traveled the world. They say the best there's no teacher like travel, and having a diverse team can actually incorporate that without even the need for travel at times, or at least features of that need.
Thinking about your book, what would you say as main takeaways you would want to give people about, connectiveness, and how do you project that, if I say, in your daily life, not only with clients but also with your family? And
Well, I
how
think
do you
each
teach
of
your
us,
kids?
it's a great question, and I think that the directive is each of us in this lifetime
Yeah.
is meant to figure out our own formula for connection.
Okay.
Volker and David, each of you has similar places where you connect and probably places where you don't find connection for yourself. Like I know people who need to spend weeks at a silent retreat to feel really connected. And I know people for whom that would be an absolute hell. And perhaps that they might still benefit from it, but that's not the way they would want to connect. They would much rather engage in something more interpersonal and collaborative. And each of us has a personal directive to figure out their formula for feeling connected within this lifetime. I remember just searching for it. I was thinking, well, since I can't be a psychologist, even though I want to be a psychologist, like, what do I want to do instead? And I was pinging for other possibilities. Maybe I'll be a real estate agent. Maybe I'll, fill in the blank. And I know that for me, many of those places would have been empty shells. I would not have felt connected to myself, others, or the world, that I needed personally to become a therapist. That was worth the investment of time. But I also know that, as much of an extrovert as I am, I also have learned from my more introverted wife that there are blessings in quiet. And she has different daily needs for quiet than I do, but I also need it. And so I've been learning, and I've been trying. It's almost like trying on shoes. Like, do these fit? How do they feel? Sometimes we want a shoe to fit that doesn't fit because they look so great, but they actually hurt our feet and we can't walk as far. Our job is to find the shoes that fit.
I like that analogy. I just finished reading a really good book, which I forgot the title, so I need to look it up. It's a really good book, but I forgot. My therapist actually recommended it to me, and it's called Secure Love by Julie Menano.
I can infer from the title that it's probably about attachment styles.
It is, yeah. It's all about attachment theory in relationships, and it's a great read. So yeah, definitely for anyone listening. So because we talked about relationships here, definitely recommend, if you're interested to read that, and definitely enjoyed that.
It's one of the most important contributions, and there's a tragedy that occurred in England. This stems from the work of a fellow by the name of John Bowlby, who died in 1980.
Yeah.
A British psychoanalyst, and he was not fully appreciated in his time. And here, 45 years later, it's one of the hottest topics in psychotherapy, and for a damn good reason, because it's so important to understand our attachment styles and how to attend to those. So yeah, I agree with you, Volker. That is one of the greatest things out there, is attachment theory. And there have been various neuropsychologists. Stan Tatkin is a couple therapist who writes about the neurobiology of attachment extensively. And just so grateful to all the people who are contributing in this way.
Sorry, David, don't want to go too much into therapy. So
No. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. But I just obviously want to get round to the music questions. So so
I don't know anything about music, by the way, yet. I'm just, it all goes over my head.
Oh no.
So what do you play, or what was your role in the band?
So I was never particularly good at music, but I always wanted to be a part of a thing. It was funny because, like many men from my generation, the very first time I heard Stairway to Heaven, I realized I needed to learn to play the guitar. That was just like, you hear that song once and you already know this is maybe the greatest thing ever written. And so I did. I was never particularly good at the guitar, but I was fun to have in a band. And so I was demoted from guitarist to bass player in this band with these amazing musicians. They were actually really good. But I viewed myself as doing least harm by playing bass adequately. And the other three musicians were absolute beasts. I had no business being there, except I was fun to have around. So, but it was a great experience. We played a lot of originals, but we also played some U2 and other groups of our time. Depeche Mode was a very important group for me. I grew up with a lot of English music from the 80s. I mean, it was, Tears for Fears, Depeche Mode, Smiths, The Cure. These were crucial, foundational bands for my psyche. They would delve into really dark regions of the soul, and I sometimes stayed there a little too long and would become a bit depressed, but they also helped me stretch into feeling various emotions. And I'm so grateful to these groups who essentially midwifed me through various emotional experience, breakups and loneliness. And oh my gosh, these poets who put music to their poetry. I mean, they're just amazing. Sometimes they make no sense, the lyrics, and sometimes they make a lot of sense and you don't want to follow it. But very often they will take you on a trip, and I'm just so in love with music in general, and especially to music from England.
Oh, so
Not just pandering to the crowd.
Well, where I live is we're just outside Crawley, which is where The Cure's from. And when they released their last album, how they started promoting it was they literally just like sent a poster to this pub where they did their first ever gig, and then sort of people started like taking photos and like putting it on Twitter saying, oh, it looks like The Cure have got a new album out. So then all these Cure fans are like phoning this little pub. Yeah, but
That's absolutely brilliant.
man, so music's obviously still like a big. Do you still play, or are you still
No,
just
not really.
more-
I still have a guitar, and my wife is still on me to get back into it, even just playing, at campfires or on the porch. But I've not yet felt as drawn to that. I consider my musical instrument my podcast, and that's how I'm using it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can see, I've got an acoustic just over my shoulder.
Oh, nice.
But and it has just been there in the corner for God knows how long. But it is sort of going back to kind of what we were talking about like, well, learning something outside of your job, or the sense of accomplishment. And yeah, I know that if I did actually play it for 20 minutes, it would give me such a sense of accomplishment. And
What kind of guitar do you have, and what kind of music would you play on it?
Well, it is just I don't know, just an acoustic. It's not. I don't think it's a decent vintage or anything. It's not a Fender. It's not a Fender or a Gibson. I can only really play a little bit of Nirvana.
So here you are crossing the ocean to my side.
Exactly. Yeah.
How funny.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, what oh my gosh, what a breakthrough band. I mean, my God, so good.
Yeah. Sorry, Volker.
No, what should I say about German music? We just don't export it, right? Because no one understands what we're talking about.
Oh, well, obviously,
I think about
David
Hans Zimmer.
Hasselhoff was the.
He was big. Well, in terms of German music, Kraftwerk, which was the OG electric band, as well as Tangerine Dream, Johannes Schmöling, Edgar Froese. These guys were I remember listening to. Tangerine Dream was very important to my psyche. They would take me. I don't know if you're familiar with these guys, but they were a trio of some of the earliest electronic musicians, and they would take me on these trips. And Hans Zimmer, what are we even talking about? Kraftwerk, amazing. So there's a lot of great stuff. And there's this guy named, I think, Ludwig von Beethoven. I think he might have come from Germany. He was pretty good.
Whatever happened to that guy?
So I'm just saying.
Going back in the classical music, obviously Germany and Austria, which we annexed at some point, but that's a different topic. Has a lot of history in the classical music, right? So I read a lot of those biographies, which are highly fascinating, right?
And then there's this other musician. I consider comedy a form of music. I don't know if you know Falula Borg.
No.
But he's this unbelievable German comedian who has me on the floor pounding it because he's that funny.
German
And
comedian.
Yes, I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but I swear to you, he is out of this world, and I cannot get enough Falula Borg. I wish he was around more. Brilliant is all I have to say. And of course, there's this fella from England who I can't see enough of, and I wish he'd just do a lot more Sacha Baron Cohen. So it may sound like I'm pandering to the home teams, but I'm just so into all that stuff. I just can't. Yeah, you're hearing my enthusiasm. I could do Falula and Sasha all day. There's nothing like them.
You just need to come and visit. As simple as
I'm
that.
in. Get me out for a speaking gig. I do speaking gigs. I love doing keynotes. They're generally very well received, and there are a host of topics I speak on. So yeah, Volker, get me out there, man. Let's go grab let's go grab some beer and talk.
I mean, I if you fly into Gatwick, I can pick you up from the airport.
That would be awesome.
Take you to the Cure pub. I mean, Brené Brown the other day, she did it. She talked in a podcast about her so she's a fan of Liverpool, right? Liverpool Football Club. Like,
as many are.
Why? She has so much great stuff, but then she supports Liverpool. I'm like, you're sitting somewhere. I think she's in Texas as well, isn't she? It's just like, how do you even get to Liverpool? Why is Liverpool Football Club such a big thing?
Well, the Premier League's massive now, though, isn't it?
It's crazy.
It's like our biggest export.
Crazy.
Was that Coach Klopp? I'm forgetting if that's Liverpool.
Yeah, well, he was.
He was.
Yeah.
I mean, just like when I think about the great coaches, like we have Steve Kerr out here, who is the coach of the Golden State Warriors, and I think of like. When I think about your topic of manning up, it's, can be exemplified by a truly great coach. If you think about a truly great coach, like a Coach Klopp, who I know is no longer sadly coaching, or Steve Kerr, who's using the most amazing forms of masculinity and stretching it. When I had him on my podcast, he said that the 4 values he uses to coach his teams to win NBA Finals. I mean, we're talking about Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, the greatest. He says he uses mindfulness, compassion, joy, and competition. Those are the 4. And I think that those are his values. That is what guides him as he coaches. I think it's brilliant. And I think it's one of the reasons why Ted Lasso, I don't know how big it is in England, but it's huge over here. Everybody watches it because it's I think so edifying to life.
Well, I think we could obviously chat all day, but unfortunately we are pretty much at time. But I mean, if people want to find out more about you, Adam, where's the best place to find you? Obviously, put all your links and profiles in the show notes. But yeah, where can we find you?
I appreciate it. I think I neglected to include my own website in the profile, but it's DRADAMDORSAY, DrAdamDorsey.com. And you can find me on YouTube. You can find my podcast on all the stations. And I'm out there.
Brilliant.
To borrow from George Costanza, I'm out there, man.
Well, brilliant. Great to have you on the podcast, Adam. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Volker and David, it has been such a great way for me to start I know you're finishing your Friday, but what a great way for me to start mine.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, man. Well, thanks for saying that.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Feel free to reach out to Volker or David via our website, www.manupdown.com or podcast@manupdown.com with any feedback or to let us know what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Hear you again soon.